We're going to move on now to the next item of business, but before we do, I've actually got a point of order from Bill Bowman. Bill Bowman to make a point of order.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I raise a point of order concerning my vote in the hate crime bill last Thursday evening. I intended to vote no, but accidentally voted yes in error. Now I'd be grateful for this to be recorded in the official report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. You won't be the first nor the last. You're not the first and you won't be the last, but thank you for making that point of order. We're going to move on now to the next item of business, which is consideration of business motion 24388 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau, setting out changes to this week's business. Could I call on Graham Day to move this motion?
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. No member has indicated they wish to speak on the motion. The question, therefore, is that motion 24388 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. Thank you. So we return now to topical questions. We have two questions this morning. The first one this afternoon. The first one is from Neil Bibby. Neil Bibby.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it and Police Scotland are ensuring that women are protected from harassment and violence.
Thank you. Cabinet Secretary Hamza Youssef.
I'm sure the member would agree that recent events have shone a spotlight on this issue and the scale of abuse, the scale of violence, harassment that women and girls face every day in our society. And I know my thoughts, the government's thoughts, and I'm certain the whole Chamber's thoughts continue to be with the family of Sarah Everard. I would take this opportunity to make clear our government's position that any form of violence against women and girls is simply unacceptable. We are investing significant levels of funding in frontline support services to ensure that women and children can safely access the support that they need. Police Scotland continue to prioritise cases of domestic abuse and harassment, and we are working closely with all of our justice partners to ensure that perpetrators receive a robust response and are held to account for their actions. I'm meeting with the Chief Constable later this week, and I will raise the matter with him directly. We have also recently established an independent working group to look at misogyny in Scotland, led by Baroness Kennedy, and it will report in months. It will consider how best we tackle misogynistic behaviour across our society, including street harassment. It is making excellent progress, with its first evidence session taking place on Friday. The Cabinet Secretary for Social Security and Older People has also extended an offer to meet with organisers of the Reclaim These Streets vigil in Edinburgh to discuss these hugely important matters.
Thank you. Neil Bibby.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. The tragic events of last week, the disappearance and death of Sarah Everard and the outpouring of women's own stories about harassment have been a reminder of men's violence against women and the fear that women too often face when they're going about their daily lives. And that is an issue not just in London or elsewhere in the UK, but right here in Scotland. Statistics out today show that while 89% of men report feeling safe walking alone in their own local areas after dark, for women it is only 65%, and this has decreased since before the pandemic. I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary would agree this is unacceptable and we need to act now. Can I therefore ask, what has the government done to improve the safety of women on Scotland's streets, and what further prevention work will it do now to tackle the serious issue of men's violence towards women ahead of the misogynistic harassment group reporting?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I thank Neil Bibby for his question? Can I agree with the substantial point that he makes? He references the Scottish Crime and Justice Survey. That does suggest that the majority of women feel safe in their communities, but he's absolutely right. There is a disparity between the numbers of men who feel safe versus the number of women who feel safe, and that cannot be right. We'll continue to fund important organisations like Gender Scotland, like Zero Tolerance Scotland, where we can provide them with funding, and support organisations like White Ribbon Scotland, who challenge men to stand up against male violence towards women. I think ultimately we have to listen to women, and I reference the fact that the Cabinet Secretary for Social Security and Older People is meeting with the organisers of Reclaim the Streets. We'll also take the action necessary where we can through legislation to protect women. Just as the member is aware, just tomorrow, in fact, we will be debating in this Parliament stage 3 of the Domestic Abuse Protection Order Bill, That will allow police and courts to issue a suspected perpetrator of domestic abuse with a protection notice or indeed a protection order. That will mean that the victim of domestic abuse, in 80% of cases, of course, that is a woman, that the domestic abuse victim will not have to flee their home simply for their own safety. So where we can take legislative action ahead of the misogynistic misogyny and the criminal law working group, then we will take that action. Where we can work with third sector partners, we will do that. And where the opposition and others want to work cross-party, then this government will absolutely make themselves available to be part of that solution.
Thank you. Neil Bibby.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, and we certainly will work with the government cross-party to tackle this issue. We've all been horrified by the story of Sarah Everard, who lost her life due to men's violence simply by walking home. However, even at home, women are not safe from violent men, and yet we also know that it's too often the victims of violence that are forced into economic hardship and forced to upend their lives in order to flee from violence, whereas their abusers too rarely face retribution for their actions. Domestic abuse is the fourth most common reason given for a homeless application in Scotland. As the Cabinet Secretary said, tomorrow we will be voting on the Domestic Abuse Protection Scotland Bill. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, will the government support Rhoda Grant's amendments, which seek to ensure no victim loses their right to a home from a social landlord following their experience of abuse? And what has the government done to explore how these rights could be extended to the private rented sector?
Cabinet Secretary Hamza Youssef.
I can again thank Neil Bibby for his questions. The government intends to support a number of Rhoda Grant's amendments in tomorrow's debates. There may be one or two that we think have an unintended adverse consequence, and we can debate those tomorrow, but certainly a number of Rhoda Grant's amendments the government will be looking to support. When it comes to domestic abuse, I'm pleased to say this Parliament has managed not just to reach consensus, but often unanimity on our desire to tackle this particularly pernicious crime. And as I say, I will continue to work with members right across the political spectrum to see what we can do to ensure that not just our streets, not just our communities, but as Neil Bibby says, our homes are safe for women. And that process must start by listening to the quite frankly horrendous testimonies that we've heard from women about how they feel unsafe in our communities. So I will pledge to work closely with any member who wishes to stamp out male violence against women.
Thank you. We've got three members who wish to ask a supplementary. If we have concise questions and answers, we'll get through them all. Shona Robertson, to be followed by Liam MacArthur. Shona Robertson.
Thank you. The horrific murder of Sarah Everard has been felt strongly by so many, and my thoughts are also with her family and her friends. Many women have reflected, including myself, of not feeling safe on the streets, of holding our keys in our hand, and we shouldn't have to feel like that. So does the Cabinet Secretary think that in addition to the work of the newly formed Misogyny Working Group, that we do need to consider urgently what further action needs to be taken to ensure women's safety? And surely that must include working with boys at an early age, change the attitudes of the next generation.
Cabinet Secretary.
I couldn't agree more with Shona Robertson, who has often raised these issues in the parliamentary chamber. What I would say is that we're pleased to work with projects like Emily's Test, led by the very inspirational Fiona Dre, which does actually seek to work with young men, young boys, in order to deal with issues of toxic masculinity. I do think we have to address these issues that Shona Robertson mentions. I know and I'm pleased to have seen a project by Rape Crisis Scotland where they go into high schools, again, talking to young people, but predominantly aiming their education towards young boys about issues around consent and so on and so forth. But I couldn't agree more with the general point that Shona Robertson is making. We don't have to wait for the working group in order to get on with taking action. Tomorrow will be an example of that when this Parliament hopefully will pass the Domestic Abuse Protection Scotland Bill. But equally, where we can work with other organisations, with third sector partners, to do that work with our young men, young boys in society, then that is work that this government absolutely supports.
Thank you. Liam MacArthur, to be followed by Annie Wills.
Thank you, President Officer. Can I declare an interest as an ambassador for White Ribbon Scotland, Orkney? Like many over lockdown, I've found a daily walk not just a luxury but a need. I take that for granted. I can do it safely day or night. With news of Sarah Everard's murder and the discussions that have followed, it's horrifically clear that too many women don't enjoy the same privilege. The stories of street harassment have been harrowing. It's not acceptable, and women should have the right to feel safe. Scottish Liberal Democrats believe a commission should be established to build on the work of Dame Helena Kennedy's group, come forward with recommendations and pave the way for the changes that need to be made. Is that an idea that commands the support of the Cabinet Secretary?
Cabinet Secretary.
I would certainly be willing to explore that with an open mind. I heard this morning on Good Morning Scotland, Liberal Democrat Carol Lindsay. I've often found her to be a very considered and thoughtful individual, and certainly this idea that's been presented by Liam MacArthur in terms of commission is absolutely something that I'd be happy to explore, because in some respects, of course, we have to accept that although legislation can play its part, it is not the only answer. We've heard from Shona Robinson and others that education is clearly a part of that. So a commission may help in bringing all of those strands of work together. So I will certainly engage with Liam MacArthur and anybody else directly on any proposals they have to tackle the scourge of men's violence against women.
Thank you. And Annie Wells.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. May I also send my condolences to the friends and family of Sarah Everard. The latest figures from the Crown Office highlight how prevalent domestic abuse still is within our society, with the number of domestic abuse charges in 2019-2020 at a 4-year high. Yet any domestic abuser convicted to less than 4 years in prison will be automatically let out halfway through their sentence. This soft-touch approach to justice does not protect victims. So will the SNP and the Cabinet Secretary commit to ending automatic early release for perpetrators of domestic abuse, as well as other criminals who also enjoy this luxury?
Cabinet Secretary.
I can say it's a shame that Annie Wells has chosen to politicise the issue in such a way. We, of course, ended our automatic early release for long-term prisoners, which was introduced by her own party. But the issue around tackling domestic abuse, I think, will be debated most effectively tomorrow. We have the opportunities at Parliament to hopefully unite, transcend the politics, and unite and pass the Domestic Abuse Protection Scotland Bill, which will allow Police Scotland, it will allow our courts to impose a domestic abuse protection notice and indeed a domestic abuse protection order, where for the first time a suspected perpetrator of domestic abuse can be removed from their home. Therefore, the victim of domestic abuse can remain with their family in the family home, not have to end up fleeing the family home, not end up homeless. Now, if Annie Wells would like to be part of that coalition that is giving that additional protection to the victims of domestic abuse, which are predominantly women, then I would very much welcome that. And if they have any other ideas that we can take forward to protect victims of domestic abuse, then of course I will listen to them. But trying to frame this as a debate versus soft versus hard justice, I'm afraid, is not doing the issue any justice whatsoever. We will follow the data, we will follow the evidence, and we will continue to take a smart justice approach.
Thank you very much. Question number 2, Beatrice Wishart.
To ask the Scottish Government whether its discussions have concluded with the OECD regarding publication timetables relating to its review of Curriculum for Excellence.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
President Officer, my officials have written formally to the OECD highlighting the motion agreed by Parliament on the 17th of February that called for the immediate publication of its draft report, and asking the OECD to confirm if this would be possible and to clarify their position on the matter. In responding, the OECD has made its position very clear. It will not publish its draft report, nor will it allow the Scottish Government to do so. The correspondence has been published on the Scottish Government's website. We now need to let the OECD focus on finalising its findings and the drafting process. I look forward to the publication of the final report in June and to its helping inform a dispassionate discussion on the future of Scottish education.
Beatrice Wishart.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, but the problem is the Cabinet Secretary has got himself into a bit of a bind here. 322 days ago, Scottish Liberal Democrats first called for the public to hear from the OECD before the election. And then at the Education Committee in September, I specifically asked whether the Cabinet Secretary would contact the OECD to request an interim report. He replied, quote, "I will be happy to discuss that with it." But our Freedom of Information request showed ministers did precisely nothing. It took a defeat of Parliament to coax the Cabinet Secretary into giving anyone anything before the election. Presiding Officer, the public are being asked to judge the SNP on the record on education, but the Cabinet Secretary has orchestrated this obstruction through his agreements and inaction. Why didn't the Cabinet Secretary contact the OECD in September when he said he would?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the OECD review was commissioned by a government response to decisions taken by the Education and Skills Committee and in Parliament. The proposals were put forward, the remit was agreed, and then of course we've had the impact of COVID, which has disrupted the ability of the OECD to engage with schools because of the period of disruption that we had going back to last March. I explained to Parliament in a government-inspired question the timetable that would be followed by the OECD that was agreed to enable them to follow the proper process that they are taking forward. And we have asked this respected international organisation to undertake that exercise. I think we should leave that organisation to do exactly that. I've made every endeavour to try to secure early publication insofar as that's possible, and the OECD have indicated that is not possible.
And Beatrice Wishart.
The government could have asked for a change and for something before the election, just like it asked the OECD to extend its work to cover exams. The government is the client. But timings aren't my only concern. The Scottish Practitioners Forum is, quote, shaping and developing this report. And that sounds sensible until you learn Education Scotland and the SQA are on that practitioners forum. They are under the microscope. So what are they doing on a group shaping and developing this report?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think the points that Beatrice Wishart sort of glides past in her question are the fact that on two occasions we have asked the OECD to extend further the scope of the work that are undertaken. This started off as an examination of the senior phase. It was extended to the broad general education. It's also extended into assessment. So I don't think it's a particular surprise that the timescale extends, and we've also had the disruption of COVID. In relation to the Scottish Practitioner Forum, the Scottish Practitioner Forum draws together a number of practising members of the education system in Scotland. It's led, for example, by Tony McDade, the Executive Director of Education Resources at South Lanarkshire Council. It involves classroom teachers, it involves head teachers, it involves heads of service from local authorities, a college principal. It involves Professor Mark Priestley, who undertook the what I would describe as pretty challenging review of the SQA in the light of the exam issues last year. And yes, of course, there is participation from Education Scotland and the Scottish Qualifications Authority to make sure the OECD are able to speak to the range of different participants in the delivery of Scottish education. That was what the OECD asked us to put together, was a practitioner forum that they could engage in discussion and debate with, and it has to be representative of the whole of the education system in Scotland.
Thank you. If you're quick, Jamie Green to be followed by Ross Greer. Jamie Green.
Thank you. On the 17th of February, the Deputy First Minister told this chamber, I quote, "I will share draft findings from that work in March, with a final report to be published in June." Given that he is now saying that the OECD won't let him share those findings, can I simply ask, have they changed their mind? Has he changed his mind? Or did Parliament misunderstand his promise to the chamber?
Cabinet Secretary.
I actually have placed a document in SPICE which enables members of Parliament to access that material. That is precisely what I have done. Now, the OECD have indicated, and I've published the correspondence, that that must be treated as a confidential document. So I'm trying my level best to meet the terms of Parliament's requests along with the strictures that apply to me in a contract that we have agreed with the OECD. And I don't think a government minister breaching a contract is a particularly good look for the Parliament to ask that I should undertake.
Ross Greer to be followed by Claire Adamson. Ross Greer.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. While we wait for the OECD report, a report by the Social Market Foundation was published today covering very much the same ground. It suggested that Scotland should move away from the single high-stakes end-of-term exam model and towards a continuous assessment approach. Without wishing to preempt the OECD report, would the Education Secretary acknowledge that the time for change in Scotland's exam system has now come?
Slightly broader question, but briefly, Mr.
It may be broader, Presiding Officer, but it's absolutely relevant. And there was commentary just yesterday morning in broadcast media from the Commission on School Reform, who were taking a slightly different point of view to the one that Mr Greer has put forward. But the point that Mr Greer puts to Parliament is an issue which I think must be openly debated and discussed. We must have an assessment system that reflects our curriculum and which commands confidence within the country. And there's perfectly legitimate arguments for a continuous assessment model versus an end-of-session examination model, or a mixture of both, which is essentially some of the arrangements we have just now. But I think that issue that Mr Greer raises is an entirely legitimate issue for us to focus on, and there's plenty of evidence out there for us to have that discussion.
Claire Adamson. We may have lost Claire Adamson from the looks of things. I'm afraid so. We're going to have to move on now. That concludes topical questions. We'll move on to the next item of business.